All right. Steph, how's it going?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good. Good to have you. This is Steve Kershke from QLI. Those of you who are joining our webinar for the first time, this is our regular monthly webinar. And we have Steph Robe today in the studio. We're going to be talking about diet, physical activity, and how it relates to the recovery model. And we also have Don Terry. Don, thanks for joining us. I know you're out and about today.
Good morning.
You're out at Markel, right? Are you local today?
Yep. I'm in Omaha.
Good deal. Well, thanks for carving out some time. And we're excited for this webinar. Steph, I know you've given this presentation a handful of times, but thanks for joining our group.
Absolutely.
Before we get started, Don and I want to praise the group. I know that we've been obnoxiously discussing the CEU situation, but last month we only had like one or two people ask for their CEUs, which was huge. And I think the people who asked, there was firewall issues. So we appreciate everyone's dedication to that. It makes our job much easier. Just as a reminder, this is a CEU presentation for CCMC only. Those of you who are adjusters or otherwise, we apologize. And it's just a bit of a challenge to get those CEU'd. So CCMC only. We will do a poll question at the very end of this presentation. There's only one question. We will call it out and let you know that it's coming. I believe it's a true-false question, and you need to do that in order to get your CEUs. That's the first thing that you need to do. Secondly, following this presentation, usually Don and I try to get these out by the end of the day. You will get an email. It will have an evaluation link in that email. You need to fill out that evaluation of the presentation. And upon doing so and hitting submit, you will automatically receive the CEU record for your records as well as the slides. So those will come to you after the fact. As always, if you have questions, you can reach out to us via email or phone. We'd be happy to help you with that. So that's all for housekeeping. We'll give you one more reminder at the end. With that, Steph, let's get started.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Typically, when I do this presentation, you'll see two names up on the slide. Myself, I'm a registered dietitian and licensed medical nutrition therapist. And then Addie Kars, who is a certified level 3 CrossFit trainer, who sometimes will cover some of the physical activity aspects of things. Addie is not with me today. So if you have any questions specifically for her, I can always get them to her, and then we can follow up with that after the presentation. So the objectives for today's presentation is to gain a better understanding of the real benefits of nutrition post-injury, distinguish between science-based and nonsensical nutrition information, because as we all know, there's a lot out there, and to gain clarity on how intense physical activity can be of benefit post-injury. So you're going to see a bunch of stuff kind of popping up on the screen here. And this is just a little representation of all the products that are out there when it comes to brain health. And we know that consumers, family members, survivors are all very overwhelmed by the amount of supplements that are out there, diets that are out there, books that are out there claiming to be the diet fix for brain health. And so as nutrition professionals, it's our job to help folks kind of find their way through all that information and find something that actually might be of benefit to them. So where is the science? You'll see on this, there's 4 tiers of kind of what we know. So the majority of the science with nutrition and brain health is in degenerative neurological conditions. So when you get into things such as MS, and then in particular, like dementia, that's where the bulk of the science is when it comes to nutrition and brain health. So the unfortunate thing about that is when you have all these studies being done with things such as Alzheimer's, dementia, is that people are taking that information and then they're generalizing it to brain health. And unfortunately, that's not the way it works. So a lot of the studies that are out there are on that. And we have to remind people to kind of look and see what kind of client was represented in the study for that particular subject. Then you have brain injury in acute care. So that's where the second bulk of the science is right after an injury. So how important is nutrition right in that acute care stage. As soon as someone's admitted to the emergency room, how important is it to ensure that we are getting nutrition into that individual as soon as possible? Now it's where it starts to get a little muddy. There's not a lot of research out there when it comes to moderate and severe traumatic brain injury, and really minimal information when it comes to mild brain injury. So, and that's where we're going to see a lot of our individuals are in that moderate to severe and mild traumatic brain injury. So it's hard as a practitioner when someone comes in and they want to go over all this exciting research and products that are out there and spending hundreds of dollars on supplements. And you don't want to kind of diminish their dreams of what might be helpful, but also provide some education on where the science really is. And so they very well may be wasting their money. Some of these products may do harm. And so kind of helping them get through that a little bit.
Do you feel like I guess the constraints on the research is simply as you move further down that list, it's harder to get the people to participate? There's, as we say all the time, when you've seen one brain injury, you've seen one brain injury. So is that the same constraint in terms of why you see what you see further down compared to MS and some of those other degenerative?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it, is that it's hard to get good research on it because you are looking at every injury so individually that it's going to be hard to get information that all kind of meshes together. The other unfortunate part of it, that's just reality, is the money's not there. So
to do the research.
Yep. So people want to put their money into degenerative conditions. It's hard to find somebody who hasn't had a family member that's been affected by dementia and Alzheimer's. Whereas when you get into traumatic brain injury, it's maybe less prevalent in families or less noticed. And so the money of the research just going into that. I kind of pulled up a quote here. So Natalie Gavis, she's a neurology dietitian at UCLA, pretty prominent in the field. So she's someone I would look up to as knowing the information. And she has a quote that just says, "There's still so much we are learning. We don't have a solid understanding of the role nutrition has in healing. Therefore, a lot of the interventions are focused on symptom management." So that's still kind of where we are with nutrition and brain injury. Here's something we do know, though, and these diets are, in general, some of you probably have heard of the Mediterranean diet. That one has been around for quite some time. But on the other side of your screen is what we call the anti-inflammatory food guide pyramid. So this is Dr. Wheel's anti-inflammatory food guide pyramid. So these two food pyramids we know are beneficial to health simply because of what they're made up of, right? So when you get down to actual food items, the science on that stuff is pretty strong. So we're able to identify particular foods that can help decrease inflammation in the body, that can help with the process of neuroplasticity. So there's some things that we do know with these diets that we can say, okay, we know post-traumatic brain injury, there's metabolic changes that occur, would include inflammation. You have changes in metabolism, gastrointestinal function, an increase in insulin resistance. And so we can look at these two diets and say, okay, knowing that we know that about brain injury, we can say that these two food guide pyramids are going to be a good fit for what we're trying to accomplish post-injury.
Nice to see red wine at the top.
We probably don't
share
share that one a lot, but yeah. So we're going to kind of break these down into the groups and take a quick look of what's in them that we would want to promote. So these will go a little pretty quick. But the first focus is going to be on fruits and vegetables. So when we get into our fruits and vegetables, there's a lot of research that talks about cognitive protection with things called flavonoids and phytochemicals, which is what you're going to be find in your fruits and vegetables. We also know that the brighter, the deeper the color, the more benefit there is to those fruits and vegetables, and that every color offers a different profile of phytochemicals and flavonoids. So if someone isn't a big fruit and vegetable eater, we just try to slowly introduce different types other than what they're eating now to get them to improve that profile of fruits and vegetables and phytochemicals into their body. So some of that have the most benefit when it comes to flavonoids are like blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, cherries. Those have all been shown to have flavonoids that can help with memory. So that's when we get into, again, more of the studies being with dementia and Alzheimer's. but we can say that we know it has this property. And so when you're talking about whole foods, the risk of a lot of these whole foods is minimal. So if we're going to start implementing more of them, that's where we're gonna focus. You also have things like super greens. So spinach, kale, broccoli, your collards, they're high in vitamin K and have been proven to slow cognitive decline. So if you have somebody whose cognition is on the decline, you might want to look at implementing more of those types of foods in the diet. Another great thing to know in general for you guys who are on here is just a lot of these foods, when you're talking about antioxidants and flavonoids and anti-inflammatory compounds, the more you can get on top of it ahead of hand, the better. So ideally, that's why we preach a lot of this stuff too before someone acquires an injury, because we want to set them up for the best success. Citrus fruits also have good amounts of vitamins and minerals that your body needs to function properly. So looking at B vitamins, potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, copper, a lot of good stuff in citrus fruits. Beets are kind of highly studied right now. It's always interesting when we have folks come through the door and you kind of take a look at their med list and see everything that they're on and the supplements they're on. And I've noticed within the last 6 months, there's been a higher prevalence of beet supplements. And the reason behind that is because it's high in nitrates, and nitrates help with the increase of blood flow to the brain. So where the studies occurred naturally in that, like where they started, was actually in the sports field. So that's where they started studying beets as a supplement for athletes. But that again has been kind of started to be generalized to other populations.
Beets is a food I'd have to come to you and be like, how do we make a beet taste good? Come on, Steph.
It's an earthy flavor. It's really good.
We do have a question around the benefits of organic fruits and veggies. Okay. I'm guessing it's compared to just maybe something that is not organic. So yeah, whether now is a good time to answer that, or at some point, if it's going to come up, that'd be a really great thing for you to address.
I can make a quick statement on that. And then we can always revisit if we need to. So, we always talk about how can we get people to do more fruits and vegetables? That is goal number one. So if organic is important to someone, that's fantastic. But I'll tell you, as a health practitioner, I don't necessarily focus on having people get organic. Organic can mean a few different things. So, I think the biggest reason why people like it is because it means that there's not going to be all the pesticides and such used in the product, which of course is ideal. For most fruits and vegetables, if you wash them well, you're getting rid of all that anyway. So for the finance part of it, for organic being quite a bit more expensive for the average consumer, again, my goal would always be, hey, let's just get teach them how to prepare it correctly and just get more fruits and vegetables in them and not so much focus on organic. If it's in their budget, great, we can do that, but that's not the priority.
Gotcha.
All right, the next one will be in your whole wheats, your whole grains. So you have some pictures of different whole grains there so people can see what else they can do other than white rice. So you have things such as oats, barley, quinoa, rich in B vitamins, reduce inflammation of the brain, and potentially preserving your memory. So B vitamins are a wonderful little thing that are often fortified in our grains and come naturally in your whole grains. Pasta, barley, brown rice, oatmeal, bulgur have vitamin E, which is used to protect and preserve healthy cells. So a lot of great things in your whole grains. As you refine these grains, they lose a lot of their properties, and that's why they may or may not be fortified. So if you're going to get something that is refined, you're going to want to look for it to be fortified. But these things, you don't have to worry about it, right? Because they're naturally there. It's not stripped of it. All right. Going into healthy fats. So here's what we know about healthy fats. We know a lot about omega-3. We know that omega-3, that the brain is made of the fat necessary for electrical signals to fire and process. And we know that omega-3s help with that process. So having a diet rich in omega-3s can be a very beneficial thing. You also have walnuts and walnut oil on there, which has something called alpha lipoic acid. You'll see it a lot of times just as ALA, and that is a natural artery cleaner, which again is great for the general public, but post-injury, there is an increase in cardiovascular disease. And so anytime that we can promote heart health, that's a good thing as well. Avocado oil improves blood pressure, optimizes brain health, high levels of B vitamins, and lowers levels of homocysteine. That can increase the free radicals, and increase in free radicals means inflammation. So that's the role that avocado oil can play in the diet. Going into fish and seafood, this is sometimes where we lose a lot of people.
Especially with those sardines down at the bottom left.
I know.
Come on.
They're so good for you, but I totally get it. But yeah, this one's a hard sell because either you really like seafood or you really don't like seafood. And so it can be challenging to push people to eat more seafood, but man, there's a lot of benefits, particularly in foods like salmon, your wonderful sardines that you're going to go home and get tonight. Canned salmon, canned tuna, those are kind of the main fish. So also when you get into those levels of omega-3s that we're looking for, you're also talking about some of your stronger fish. It's not going to be your pollock or your really
not
like
my
mild
tilapia, my mild white tilapia.
Your mild white tilapia. There's still some, it's just not at the same level as these fatty fish. And we know that DHA and EPA, which are the two types of these omegas that we're trying to promote, and DHA being prevalent in the brain. So 40% of the fatty acid in the brain is DHA. And that's where these healthy fish come into play. So even if you're going to get a supplement, which we'll talk about supplements, but you can kind of try to find ones that have like a 3-to-1 ratio. You just have to flip it over and look.
George, my youngest, loves salmon. He won't eat peanut butter and jelly, but he'll eat salmon.
I mean, you did something right there. I wish I could say the same for my kids. I don't mind it, but I wouldn't say it's something they love. So these are going to be more on the side of the anti-inflammatory pyramid. This one isn't necessarily a focus on the Mediterranean pyramid, but there's certain foods that decrease inflammation in the body. And these are things that you may look at like not what we can take out of someone's diet, but what can we add to someone's diet to give them the properties that we're wanting from these foods. So looking at mushrooms in particular, shiitake and oyster, those are the two that have the most health benefit when it comes to inflammation. Unfortunately, not the portobello, which is probably the one that people consume the most, but they have been the shiitake and oyster improve immune function. Shiitakes have something called lentinin, and they heal chromosome damage, which is obviously a really huge thing when it comes to healing. Soy is kind of a not controversial, but maybe a little bit more on there, particularly for women, because there's a lot of information out there about soy and breast cancer. But when it comes to eating it in moderation, they do have isoflavones in them. And those isoflavones have been shown to be helpful for like cardiac health and bone loss. Whole soy foods is what we're talking about, not soy protein powders or imitation meat with soy isolate. We're talking about like the whole soy foods that the benefit is when it comes to decreasing inflammation. And again, more isn't always better. So it's always consuming these products in moderation.
Just a side note, I feel like you should change the theme to what's that show with all the guys Transformers. You're talking about like flavonoids and all these.
Oh, do I sound like I'm like
no, all the words are just like Transformer-ish. We should just change the theme.
Autobots.
Yeah.
All right. Going into some other proteins. So going back on the fish, I didn't talk about this, but what the recommended goal is 3 to 6 times per week.
3 to 6 times to eat fish.
Yes. That would be
servings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 3 to 6 servings.
Okay.
So considering you're having like a serving, right? Which I know some people do more than a serving at a time, but that would be the goal. I know that's an ideal world. And there's not many people, especially where we are in the Midwest, that are doing that much seafood. But that would be the goal. And then looking at some of these other proteins to help fill in those holes. So when you're talking about, okay, so what else do I eat outside of the times that I'm going to have my fish? We would be focusing on lean proteins. So where do you get those? Chicken obviously is a great source. I know people get burnt out on chicken. I heard that a lot. Eggs, Some of your cheeses, again, when you get into things like cheeses, they can be pretty high in sodium and other fats. So you want to be mindful of portions. Eggs are fantastic because they have something called choline, and choline has been known to promote brain health. And so again, in moderation, eggs are wonderful. Then you get down into your red meats, which we really encourage people to just be mindful of the portions, looking at, 2 to 3 times a week with those red meats. So that's kind of where we're at with how you can fill in with other proteins.
What about like the dairy discussion in general? So like milk and things like that, are where is that at in the risks, and how does that fit into like the protein discussion?
Yeah, so dairy is a good source of protein. You're usually looking at around 9 grams of protein per serving, which isn't too shabby. Now, when you can compare it to things like chicken, when you're up at like 20 grams per serving, obviously it's not the same. But we have found that for people who, especially just whether it's just a lot of work to eat or their appetite is minimal, that dairy can be a good option for them to get in that protein that they need. And then there's things we can do to the dairy to amp up the protein even more. Again, there's a few people that maybe have issues with lactose. And so that's a discussion that you have to have with a patient or client as far as where they're at with tolerating dairy. I know that one can be a controversial subject too, because there's people who believe a lot in dairy and maybe increasing inflammation. I will tell you that for research you can find for, you can find research against on the subject of dairy. So it's just very, again, personalized.
Cool. Just Steph, I'll keep you going. Just one quick note. We are having a lot of great questions come through. They're a little all over the board, so I'm trying not to interrupt you, but we do have quite a bit towards the end.
Okay.
So if we haven't answered your question, we'll get to it. Either I'll try to time it up when Steph has a good break. We'll get to it at the end, or if we don't get to it, we'll try to follow up after. So just keep the questions coming. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Okay, so now we're back on to the anti-inflammatory side of the pyramid, because there's not a lot of focus on this on the Mediterranean. But I will tell you that in general, individuals who eat a Mediterranean diet in a traditional sense often have a lot of these foods in them naturally. So what are some healthy herbs, spices, and teas that would be of benefit post-injury? You have turmeric, which I think is a really hot one right now. You see a lot of people taking turmeric or curcumin supplements. It is high in anti-inflammatory properties. They did a study specifically in India where you're going to have a high prevalence of the use of turmeric. And in India in general, they have a lower level of dementia and better cognitive results on age-appropriate tests. So testing the same age in the United States versus in India, what they have seen is they're trending quite a bit higher in India on those cognitive tests. Does it have to do with turmeric specifically? Probably not. I'm sure it's the whole diet, but we do know by putting turmeric in a lab that it does have anti-inflammatory properties. Ginger, when studying ginger, there's kind of some evidence that it shows with preliminary working memory, can help with reaction time and attention. Well, again, a lot of these are done in a controlled setting, so it might be a little bit different than what you would see working out in the real world, but we do know that those compounds are there. Cinnamon is also a big one. Cinnamon is also used for diabetes management. So it's kind of an interesting little spice. It has something called cinnamaldehyde, which sounds scary because it sounds like formaldehyde, but cinnamaldehyde, and that can help inhibit buildup of amyloid beta brain plaque. So that plaque buildup that can occur, it can help inhibit that. So that again goes to a lot of more of your things like MS and such versus traumatic brain injury. But because we know there's benefit, it's also worth the conversation. Tea, white, green, oolong, 2 to 4 cups a week is what we would recommend for individuals. And then caffeine I put on here because that one comes up a lot. And what is the benefit of caffeine post brain injury? And what we know, there's so limited information out there regarding brain injury. And like you mentioned before, because every brain injury is unique, it's really hard to know. But what we have seen is that there's short-term concentration boost with caffeine. But there's a limit on that. So this is when people go, oh man, because where they see the benefit of the caffeine would be equivalent to like 6 to 8 ounces of coffee.
So that's not very much.
That's not that much. So that's considered a dosage to have a beneficial cognitive impact. Once you go beyond that, things start to actually decline. So the more caffeine you consume, it's actually affecting you in the opposite way. You're losing focus. People get more jittery, a little bit more scattered sometimes. And so that's the benefit, 6 to 8 ounces. So if someone doesn't have a caffeine sensitivity, which is really hard to know unless you do like some nutrigenomic studies, is that you can play with it with that dosage.
Okay.
And see how someone responds. So say they have in the morning, they go to, I don't know, whether they're going to physical therapy or speech therapy in the morning. If you started with that small dosage and see if it has an impact on the performance.
Maybe trying to time it up or, modify it throughout the day.
To get that short-term boost of concentration that you're looking for. So it can be therapeutic. You just have to be careful with it. Lots of supplements out there, whether that be true supplements or what we call complementary foods. So foods that are on their own maybe are not of an incredible benefit when it comes to brain health, but used as a complementary food, it may be. Branched chain amino acids. There's some studies out there now that are really fascinating, actually, when they are checking the BCAA levels of someone right after an injury. So right after they have, let's say, a concussion, or maybe it's something a little bit more to a moderate brain injury. They're drawing and checking these branched chain amino acids, and they're seeing that those numbers drop significantly after a brain injury. So they are doing some studies now of as soon as it's identified and they're in the facility that they're supplementing, probably through an IV with branched chain amino acids to see if they can get those serum levels back up. And we know that branched chain amino acids are really important to brain health. So those are some fascinating studies that are up and coming. Nothing concrete out there yet, but It's interesting. Omega-3s, we kind of talked about those. Supplements, fine. But of course, we prefer people get it from real food sources because there's other things in those real food sources that are a benefit. So eat the food, not the supplement.
So I was going to say, is it fair to assume that, to your point, we're going to try to get them whatever these nutrients are through something that you've already spoken about? And if that's not possible, or they need more, or we have to adjust, then we go to whatever else is in our toolbox, and it might be something like this. Is that the general approach?
That would be the ideal situation. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just get folks who are like, I won't eat that, I won't do that, but I'll take the supplement. And again, you don't want to say no, because many of these are low risk, although there are some risks. But it's a great option to have with things like omega-3s, right? When you don't have someone who wants to eat a lot of fish, but you know that you have some good supplements out there that you can dig into. It's better than not, at least to try. Then you get into some of these complementary foods. So we have something called the gut-brain connection, and that's another thing that's been studied for quite a while, but as science advances, we just get to learn more and more about how our brain and gut are connected, and that goes both ways, right? So the studies out there right now tend to be a lot on mental health, emotional health. So having a unhealthy gut or a gut microbiome that's not in a good balance can actually affect your mental health, increases in depression, anxiety, et cetera. So we want to work at making that gut health the best situation we can. Sometimes we can do stuff nutritionally. Sometimes it's really hard, depending on what medications they might be on, depending on what they're willing to consume, depending on what part of the world they are from. We know that if I live here for 10 years and then I move to Maryland for a year, if you check my gut microbiome, they're going to look totally different because of where I'm living. So there's a lot of variables in there, but we do know that there's a connection, and not just with mental health, but also finding some with just cognition in general. Some people want to go as far as say intelligence. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be proven, but there's been shown a lot of benefits of keeping that gut in order. So, you might look at prebiotics. So everybody knows the word probiotics, right? Like that's huge. Like you can go to the store and get Culturelle, seems to be a big one. the thing we don't talk about is that probiotics need something to eat off of. So if you don't have a healthy gut and you're taking probiotics, chances are you're not getting out of that probiotic that you're wanting to. You need to feed it with prebiotics. So like onion, bananas, whole grains, all have different compounds, one of them being inulin, that feed those probiotics. So if someone's like, I really want to take a probiotic, let's have that conversation, but let's talk about your gut health in general and how you can make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck with that. Fermented foods, so sauerkraut, pickles, yogurt, kefir, are all pretty easily accessible fermented foods. And fermented foods have been shown to have anti-inflammatory compounds. So I don't see a lot of people hanging out eating kimchi, but that would be a really good fermented food.
Or sauerkraut for that matter.
Oh, I love me some sauerkraut.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Maybe on a bratwurst.
That's the line, which is a really good protein choice, Steve. No, just kidding.
Now we're talking. Here we get to the health.
Yeah, getting into the sweets. And I'm not going to talk about these a lot. Never, ever, ever, ever do I say don't have these things. That's not a healthy outlook on life, right? I always tell people that if you want to do right by your body, you have a healthy relationship with food. And that means all food. So there's nothing you want to say, I can't have, but you want to be really smart about what you're choosing and at what frequency you're choosing those. So when you get into your good stuff, your pastries at the holidays coming up, your candies, your sodas, unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, but those are all inflammatory foods. So your processed foods, your red meats, those all have been shown to increase inflammatory markers. I always tell a personal story of myself. I'll be the first to admit it, and anyone who works here knows that, like clockwork, every morning I have my Coke Zero. It's my weakness. I can't help it. But because I do have some issues with inflammation, if I have more than one a day, I can absolutely feel that in my neck and in my lower back. It's absolutely crazy. So for me, I'm apparently really sensitive to that as a inflammatory food. So just some things to be mindful of. If you have a client that has problems with chronic pain, if you yourself have issues with chronic pain, kind of doing a diet evaluation to see if there's anything in there that you really need to look at minimizing.
It looks like we're going to transition to the fitness.
Yep.
I wonder if it's okay if we do a few questions, because
Sure.
most of them up to this point are around the nutrition side of things. Let's see here. We have a question about the fruit and veggie tablets targeted for older populations. How do they compare to actual fruits and veggies?
So when you get into the capsules, you're going to have some of the benefits in fruits and vegetables. So it's not like you're getting nothing from them. Think of it as like a multivitamin, right? So your body is going to kind of utilize what it needs out of that capsule, and the rest of it's going to be waste. So again, there's, whether it be the capsules or like the athletic greens and things like that that are out there, there's definitely benefit of them. So if that is the way someone wants to go, again, not going to shut that down. You're just missing out on what some of the other compounds that are naturally occurring in those fruits and vegetables that also have benefit, whether that be fiber or whatever the case may be. And so you're still getting some of the vitamin mineral benefit of the fruits and vegetables at a different level, if that makes sense. But it's like a multivitamin. So they're pulling that stuff out and using it in a capsule.
Got it. Question around like cauliflower and maybe veggies with little or no color. What's the take on, are these not particularly nutritious, or I guess the question around the nutritional value of those?
Yeah, so even the lighter colored ones are still going to have compounds. So I'll use onion, for example. So onion would also be considered almost like a colorless vegetable, right? But there are benefits to those. There is phytochemicals in those. So it's not like there's no benefit of them. It's just that the deeper, the richer the color, the higher the level. So when you're looking at the range, blueberries, when they have that really, really deep purple blue, that is one of the highest fruits or vegetables in phytochemicals because of color. So still benefit, there's still fiber, there's still other benefits of things like your cruciferous. I can't even say that word. Isn't that awful? Can you say it?
No, I didn't even know what that word is.
Vegetables, cruciferous. It's like
cruciferous?
Yeah.
Huh. Guess I can say it.
Probably said it better than I
don't know if I've
did.
ever heard that word.
But some of your vegetables like cauliflower would fall
Okay.
into that. There's still other benefits to it. So if people are willing to do it, definitely don't shy them away from it.
Just put ranch on it.
He said that, not me.
Question around canned versus fresh. Also have a similar question around frozen foods and veggies versus fresh. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep.
I'm guessing it's in the context of fruits and veggies.
Sure. So here's the beautiful thing is that the majority of frozen, they flash freeze, which means that the nutrition content of that fruit or vegetable has been maintained. So when you're going into frozen, it's pretty similar. Now, there's nothing compared to fresh, right? Like it's just not, because there is some degree of processing still that has to go into it. But when it comes to when you're looking at the vitamin and mineral content of something like a green bean, because of the process of they just trim the edges, they flash freeze it, everything is pretty maintained. Where you get into a pickle, but this is true of fresh too, is if you're boiling in a pot of water, a lot of those vitamins and minerals leach out into the water. I, again, don't know many people who are drinking the pot of water after they boil their vegetables. So that's where you're going to lose a lot of it. So steaming it is the best option, whether you're talking about fresh or frozen. Canned can be tricky because there's things that they put in canned vegetables that are maybe not the best for your health if you're consuming canned vegetables on the regular. Most popular one is sodium, which you can buy low sodium. But when they do that, they're putting the liquid in there with the vegetable. So when they take that and they dump it in, they're capturing some of that vitamin and mineral content. But a lot of people do what before they eat their vegetables? They drain the liquid out of there. And that's, again, where you're going to find some of that nutrition. So yes, canned is lower on the totem pole of health. But you are getting some of it. But if you like fresh frozen, that is the way to go.
Great. All right, I'll let you keep moving. Are you
Okay.
going to have some time at the end for some more questions?
I can cruise through this, especially without Addie here. I think it will go a little faster.
So I'll sort through some of these other questions. I'll let you get to the fitness and keep the questions coming. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Okay.
So the next part is individualized and adaptive fitness programs. And we're particularly looking at intense physical activity. So not that there's anything wrong with it, but we're not talking about going for a walk or picking up 5-pound hand weights and doing some movement. We're talking about what we're in particular in touch with is CrossFit, but that's because of a program we have here that focuses on CrossFit, but this could be generalized to any intense physical activity or program. So one thing we know post-injury is that there tends to be an increase in a sedentary lifestyle. It might be issues with accessing equipment. The effort to complete the activity doesn't match their return on investment. So they feel like they're working so hard and not getting the reward that they would have before. There's a degree of learned helplessness. There might be a lack of resources. So they can't get to the gym. They don't have someone to help them. They don't have the transportation. They don't have the money. And just in general, habit change is overwhelming. So if you weren't a big gym person before, and now you know, boy, I really should for my health, it's just a hard habit to begin. When it comes to mental health, we also know that there's a decrease in mental health, if you want to call it a decrease, but change in mental health post-injury. Increase in depression, anxiety, again, that learned helplessness falls in there because there may not be as good a support system. And then that lack of control. So a few studies out there, there was one done that showed 50% post 1 year, post 1 year, 50% of people I really need to back that up and start over.
Cruciferous.
Post 1 year from injury, 50% of individuals report depression. At 7 years post-injury, that increases to 66%. So the further out we get, because of some of those other support systems or whatever the case may be, we have an increase in depression. In a PubMed article talked about anxiety, and that's more linked to the social and personal dysfunction because of the injury. So on these tests or these things that people take, they'll say, do you have anxiety? Yes. And then they'll get in a little bit deeper of why they might be feeling that way. And that's what they found.
Yeah, those numbers are staggering.
Yeah,
And it's what we see here at QLI too.
absolutely.
Right. So we're getting folks at the post-acute level. And 85% of them go back into the community. We follow them for 3 years, and generally, results are pretty good, but it's the social component and the mental health component that always creeps up. And I think there's lots of reasons for that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. And then I always feel like too, like the mental health part of it can be also tied to these secondary conditions, right? So if someone is not taking as well care of himself as we'd like to see, there's going to be an increase in obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, circulatory issues, overall deconditioning, and poor sleep. So they did a 2001 study that showed that traumatic brain injury survivors are 3 times more likely to suffer mortality 1 year post-injury from circulatory conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 times more likely 1 year post than the general public. So I don't need to go into this in great detail because I don't want it to be about our program in particular. But this is the program we have on campus that specifically is that intense physical activity for individuals who are in active rehab and just want that extra kind of punch when it comes to increasing their physical independence, or community members. So folks that come in from the community and work out at our gym may have been to QLI at some point, maybe not. But just value that commitment to their health, to pushing themselves physically, to camaraderie.
Well, just to plug, again, this isn't meant to be a commercial for our program, which is called GRIT. As a physical therapist, it's really interesting to watch how we treat people from recovery, restorative, rehabilitative perspective, and how that can be used as an adjunct with something like GRIT, which is more intense, still can be done in a safe fashion, but brings lots of different benefits. And I do think that they marry up together. And I think as even clinicians, sometimes we don't push our people hard enough. And that's one of the things I've really seen with GRIT and love to watch. And Addie, she's not here. We can do PR for her. She just understands the technical piece of it and is almost an extension of our rehab program and a really great, I guess, asset to our folks who are more technically trained, I would say, but doesn't take away from her level of expertise, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah. So if any of you guys are out there listening to this and, maybe you have someone in mind, or you're just kind of, your wheels are starting to turn a little bit, I would say, even if it's not a program like GRIT, that when you are working with a client and trying to find that right fit, the most important thing is finding a trainer who understands what you're trying to accomplish. I'm not trying to hit on or be rude to any personal trainers that are out in the community and gyms, but their understanding of traumatic brain injury is likely very, very minimal. And so for them to understand the individual, what they're coming from, what they need to work on, what support they might need, could be very difficult. And that's where these specialized trainers can be really incredibly helpful.
And even on the more musculoskeletal side, right? I mean, there's just an extensive level of training that comes with navigating the challenges after really severe orthopedic issues, positioning and posture and all of those things. Again, they're not that a traditional personal trainer can't get that, but usually it requires some additional training and certifications and studies and things like that you do have to choose your trainer wisely.
Yeah.
Just like you have to choose any other provider wisely.
Correct. Yeah. And I think, for us in particular, using the CrossFit model, people sometimes get a little freaked out because they're like, oh my God, like, what are they doing in there? Is that really safe? Should you be doing that? Or you have a client who's saying, I can't do that because of XYZ. And really, when you're talking about intense physical activity, especially in the functional fitness realm, which is what CrossFit is, it's more on learning how to train your muscles to work together to accomplish something that they're wanting to accomplish. So how to best use your body in the space that it's been given is really what the goal is. Not that if someone doesn't want to bulk up, obviously, yay, we can help you with that. But that's not the true intent behind a program like this. So intensity doesn't matter. Yes, it does. So it has an impact on strength and endurance, with the focus being, improved flexibility, coordination, balance, speed, all along with strength. facilitates motor learning. So I'm going back to 2003, but there was a really interesting study done that showed that BDNF, which is a protein that supports existing neurons, is encouraging neurogenesis and stimulated by exercise. I believe that there is a place in town that also did a study on that, of just kind of reading some of that information pre-workout and then post-workout, and gathering kind of what changes chemically are happening that would promote this neurogenesis. There's also a study, 2017 study in biological psychology, that shows that cardiovascular exercise leads to positive change in the areas of the brain that are responsible for motor control. So that is a big one. And we've seen that with some of our clients as far as, 20 years post-injury. And maybe they were physically active, they kind of kept themselves in decent shape, but that this increased level of intensity, we're actually seeing improvements in motor control 20 plus years later. So it's nice to see it in action as well. When talking about stroke, I have a 2009 study that showed there was an increase in motor learning after an 8-week high intensity training program versus just stretching. So something kind of just doing some range of motion, some general walking, that we're seeing a bigger improvement with motor learning after 8 weeks when you go into a level of high intensity. Just got some information too from Tom Moran. He's at James Madison University, and they are starting a pilot program there that is similar to something that we're doing. Some of it's more on the developmental disability side of things, but talking about after 8 weeks in their program, they've seen a 21% increase in cardiorespiratory endurance just after that many of weeks, which I find it's interesting as well. I'm going to try to cruise through these.
We do have one question I think is really insightful, and I would love to hear your answer because I have my own perceptions. Question is, how many years after a TBI do you see a drop off in the effectiveness of programs like CrossFit or Grit?
What I just kind of said. So there is no cap. That is my answer. We know that part of this is through experience of just being hands-on and seeing it, but also because of where the research is now, right? That we are starting to understand that the old information that 2-3 years post, you can kind of say that is where I'm at. That's not true. And that can go for cognitive functioning or physical functioning. Yeah.
I mean, anecdotally, we have a resident up on our East campus who I'm thinking of, and he's, 10, 15 years post. What's Jeremy?
Oh, he's like 20
years post. And the amount of progress that we've seen with him in just the last few years of him doing this program is amazing, unbelievable. So yeah, anecdotally, it's really, we have more than just one story to share on that, but the research is also backing it up. So,
and again, I think it goes to coaching. I feel like if you have the right person in place, so yeah, you can say someone's maxed out. They have a gym membership, they're going a couple times a week, we're not seeing any change. Well, yeah, without the right support, and understanding the importance of repetitions and modeling and all that, yeah, you might not see any improvement. You really need to have that right level of support to make the magic happen.
Paired with the intensity, though.
Yeah, paired with the intensity.
Intensity is huge.
Yep, absolutely. Community, of course, is important. Camaraderie and competition. We always say you're in competition with yourself, not with the other person. So we keep metrics that just talk about like the first time they did a workout versus 3 months later, they do the same benchmark workout and kind of see what their progress is. And that's the competition with themselves. Having those certified coaches or the right players in place. We're lucky in the fact that we have physical therapists here. So if we run into a pickle at our gym, we can pull them in for consultation, whether that be we're just not getting this movement right, or we need a better transfer situation, we can pull them in. So that's, again, the benefit of having the right players. And small group format. So again, when you're sending someone to a class that's maybe 15 individuals for a coach, you're not going to get that individualized training and programming that will give you the max benefit. So that small group format is also really important. Us personally, we shoot for 2 to 1. So no more than 2 athletes per coach is what our goal is. When it comes to some of the studies, again, they did a study in 2010 with 156 TBI clients, and they showed a significantly reduced level of depression at the end of 4 months of training, and at 10 months, a lower level of severe depression relapse versus the medication group. So after 10 months, they were able to have less incidences of acute depression and less medication management after being involved in an intense activity program, which I think is pretty phenomenal. And we have seen that as well. So making intensity work for you. We're looking at practical application related to the demands around the world, right? And in the real world. So not just hitting some weights. How is this going to apply to you in real life? Well-rounded functional workouts, endless variety, metrics to track progress, and they can complement formal therapies, or these intense physical activities can stand alone. So however the individual wants to use it, they're going to see benefit.
Yeah, I mean, so the practical application is things like, can the person sit and stand from their wheelchair? Can they go from the floor to standing, right? And anywhere in between, and it's adapted because not everyone will or can do those things after an injury, but it's the demands of someone in a wheelchair or after a TBI are different than ours, right? And the training needs to be matched up to that, which is just really cool to see when you see just a session going on.
Yeah, we have an athlete, and we have everybody kind of talk about their goals, right? Like, what are you working towards? And it may be, I have fallen out of my chair a couple of times, and I've had to lay there until someone comes because I can't get myself back in. Okay, we're going to incorporate those movements into the workout we're doing. It's not like we work specifically on that transfer, but the movements we are doing is supporting that end goal. We had an individual with a C6 injury who's like, I have not done a sit-up since before my injury. I want to work so hard that I can do a sit-up independently. It took a while, but we got to the point where he was in 15 to 20 in a row. And again, that's just working those muscle groups in a variety of different ways to strengthen that muscular structure, to get them to achieve those goals. I'm not saying everything's possible, but we really work hard.
As small as being able to reposition yourself in your wheelchair, right? That could mean the difference in someone's independence and comfort throughout the day. And that's on the small end. And to them, it's not small. Yeah,
we have an athlete. And so I'm going to quickly talk about virtual training, and that you can see, I think it gets a stigma that maybe it's not that same level of fitness as if you were to go to a gym, which sure, anytime you're in a gym and you have people around you, you're pushing yourself a little bit harder. But again, if you have the right coaching, virtual training sessions can have just as big of an impact as the in-person sessions. We have an athlete who stopped doing the virtual sessions, just life got in the way, was doing some homeschooling with a nephew, and then started back up again. And he's like, I did not realize the workouts that I was doing, how much easier it was for me to do something as simple as grab my pot of coffee to pour myself a pot of coffee in the morning. He's like, what a difference being in this program makes for me to do little things like that. So yeah, seen that as well. So just so you know, we do have a virtual training program. If you're looking at that option for someone, just be mindful of what is it? Is it pre-recorded? Do they have live coaching? Like, what kind of support are they getting through that virtual training program?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. And
no, you're good.
I can see him at the end.
We got 7 minutes, so we're good.
Actually, I think I am at the end. Because normally Addie does a little thing here. I'm not going to, just in case anyone's interested. There's our Instagram tag for the gym, if anybody wants to check out any of the stuff that we have on there.
So they would be able to find just some sample movements and exercises and workouts that are listed here. I believe, do you all still post them here as they go?
We do. Well, so we post, there's pictures, there's some videos, there's some demos. Mostly what gets posted on there is the workouts, because a lot of our athletes use our Instagram page to view the workout. We have an app now that they can do that as well and track themselves on. But this is just more of if you could just kind of want to see what it's about. Great. So, yep.
All right. So let's get to some questions that are still lingering. We did have a question around identifying personal trainers with knowledge of TBI, especially in remote areas. I think Steph's slide on virtual, that's one option if that is not available. But I mean, identifying, the reality is, I'll just take this one and you can add to it. Identifying people with knowledge of TBI rehab anywhere actually is challenging, whether you live remotely or even in some metropolitan cities, which is why we have our virtual programs. We had another question that I answered on the side around where we're located. I should have mentioned that or been more clear about that right out of the gate. We're based in Omaha, Nebraska, but we have a virtual tele-rehab program, which helps to serve as an alternative to local providers with our specific expertise at being able to access that, right? And nutrition actually is a part of that. We've done that on a small scale, but then the virtual component of our GRIP program is one way to work around that. On the other hand, some of it is just educating on the fly, and we've done some consultations with that. We are happy to be helpful for our folks who leave our program or are affiliated with our programs. We do a lot of training with local providers if that's something that needs to happen. So it's not a great answer, but it's the one that we found to be the best. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I mean, going to a community gym, unfortunately, you are going to be hard pressed to find someone with that knowledge base. However, you might be able to find someone who's open to the education. And I think that would be a key, right? Is that finding, like, I found this personal trainer, we mesh really well, but they don't have the knowledge, pulling in the resources to kind of get them as much up to speed as you can on how to be of the best benefit for the client.
Yep. All right. While we keep answering questions, this is the time for our poll question. So this is the poll question that you need to answer to get your CEUs. So go ahead and do that. We'll keep working through some other questions that we have as we go here. Let's see. We had a question around the difference between pill versus gummy vitamins. We have some folks that have difficulty swallowing the pill form. Is there a big difference between that? Go ahead and take that one.
No.
All right. Easy one. Patient question around foods high in alkaline. Is there anything that says this helps with cognition or dementia?
Yes, there is. Again, it is, to me, I mean, knowing that nutrition science has been around since Socrates, unfortunately, modern science has only been within like the last probably 30, 40 years, which is really infantile in the realm of things. But yes, that we have seen that the more alkaline that you can keep your body, it decreases inflammation within the body and reduces the risk for all kinds of health issues or health concerns. And can also, I mean, by decreasing inflammation, you're of course supporting brain health. So yes, there's studies on alkaline foods, alkaline drinks, and just, the benefit of keeping your body in an alkaline state versus an acidic state.
Cool. Any suggestions on how to choose good supplements? Are the most expensive always the best? Can you achieve the same results with the cheaper ones? Probably a really loaded question, but
it is. I know. I
pile
have like 30
that into
seconds.
1 minute.
I don't have a generic answer. You really just have to do your due diligence and research. So whether that be flipping it over and reading the label, seeing what all is in it. A lot of times there's so many additives in it. I mean, obviously the more pure, the better. So that's one thing, is to just look at that. Another part would be to see if it's third-party tested. So not every product out there is third-party tested. As a matter of fact, most of them are not. So finding a brand that is third-party tested would be something to look at. Is it more money always better? No. The unfortunate thing is that's what we believe, is that more money means higher quality. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes it is a superior product, but that is not always the truth. So unfortunately, our health is a billion-dollar industry. And so a lot of those really expensive products are kind of your pyramid scheme type setup. And it's all about making the money and making the sale and making it sound sexy and exciting. When really, if you tear it down to its basic, it's probably something you could get in half the cost in a third-party tested product.
Or just go eat the actual thing.
Or just go eat the actual.
I think was one of the big messages, right?
Yeah. Amazing.
We had a question about options for vegans. How would you answer that question?
Yeah. Just in general?
That's all I got for you. So maybe if you talk a little bit about, if you're a vegan, what are some things you might be thinking about?
Yeah. So I think vegan is hard. Vegetarian, we can work with. Vegan is tough because there are so many foods that have animal or animal byproduct in it that you're going to have to remove from that person's food source. It is completely doable. If the person had lived that lifestyle before, it's obviously going to go a lot better for them because they know how to feed their bodies. but you throw an injury into the mix and things do have to get tweaked a bit. So there are going to have to be some changes. So hopefully they're working with a nutrition professional on that to understand that they make sure they're getting the right protein, the right fiber, just basically that their macro and micronutrient ratios are kind of in order with what they're trying to achieve. Doable, a lot of work.
Great. All right. If we didn't get your question, we apologize. We will go back through them, and Steph's information is listed here. If you could flip back one more time to the, the Instagram. Somebody had a question about that. Again, reminders on just housekeeping. I'm going to end the poll. So it looks like most everyone answered the poll. Reminder, after this, we will send out the evaluation for the webinar. You must fill that out. And when you fill that out, it will automatically trigger the CEUs and the slides to be sent to you, but it doesn't happen unless you fill that out. Let us know if you have any issues with that. It will come from me, so you can just respond back to that. So that is all we got for you today, Steph.
Wonderful.
Thanks for your presentation.
Everyone have a fantastic day.
A little plug for next month. We have Dr. Jeff Snell joining us with Brad Dexter. We're going to be talking about the vestibular system and balance function. I thought it was going to be a one-part series, but it sounds like it's going to be a three-part series. They're so into it.
They're geniuses.
Yeah, they're just really into it. So there's going to be a three-part series coming on that. And Brad and Jeff are regulars in the studio, so we're excited to have them back, and we hope that you will join us. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great day.